Namaskar, I'm Ashok Vyas and I'm delighted to be welcoming someone who is young, but his youthfulness should not deceive you in thinking that he doesn't have the extensive experience and insight related to Indian classical music as well as world music, and has pioneered a pathway where piano has become a part of the family which you would put in the bracket of instruments related to Indian classical music. Raga Pianist is his name. He has also offered many albums to music lovers. He has studied not only in India in the formal Gurukul tradition, he has also pursued his love for music at important institutions. That includes his masters here in America also. What else lies with Raga Pianist Utsav Lal? We will find out from him. Welcome, Utsav ji. Namaste.
Welcome. Thanks for having me here.
So Ravi, Utsav, Ravi is the word for sun, and that is the light which it radiates. And when you have the light, then it is Utsav, which is what you are. Let us walk back to your initial fascination for the instrument piano. Here is a tiny, comparatively shorter frame, Utsav, looking at piano. What was it that fascinated you?
I mean, so I first started playing on a little keyboard. It was just one of those things that parents like their kids to do, and all of us cousins would sit in a circle and someone would come and teach us very basic classical music, but mostly like patriotic tunes or things. But there was an actual piano in my school that didn't work, and I was always kind of fascinated by how big it was. And out of all of my cousins, I was the one who really wanted to go and figure out how it worked and get a chance to play it. So my parents put me in for classical piano lessons, and also I was studying with a wonderful pianist who was based in Delhi called Brian Silas, who played a lot of Bollywood tunes on the piano. So alongside the classical thing, he kind of started teaching me these old songs by ear, which in those days I liked them, but I kind of wanted to make my own music and improvise. And eventually that led me to Indian classical music, because it was kind of a way to, a lot of the songs were classically inspired, so I started reading up about the music and listening to recordings, and I loved how you could really express yourself in your own way through Shastriya Sangeet. And I kept learning piano. My family moved to Ireland. I started learning jazz piano because that had improvisation as well. But for India,
let me hold you here and just share some of the events where you have performed. Just the flyers we will flash quickly so that our viewers get an idea about various performances that has been a part of your journey, including some of the newspapers that have written about you. So here we have something, and then we'll probably flash quickly the other event. This was with Jaipur Literary Festival, I think, that you performed. And then this was with Pandit Kalinath Mishra ji, and so on and so forth. So very quickly, just sharing these images to give you an idea of the extensive performance-oriented experience also, which is a part of Utsav's journey. But Utsav, once again, I take this opportunity of mentioning that young Steinway artist, that what it is and how prestigious it is, we will learn from Utsav a little later. But he is also a composer, as he mentioned, and before we get to all the details about various courses, etc., you mentioned about thinking of making your own music. Brian, from whom you learned piano, is a big name. He has a lot of albums to his credit, and very well-known artist. So when you work with these kind of artists, there is a sense of awe sometimes when you are a newcomer. I don't know about the kind of rapport that he and you both built, but I have two questions. One, you wanted to figure out how the big piano, which was in the school, would play. So there is one, call it skill set, or if I use the word mechanical side of whatever it is that you are working on.
Yeah.
But there is another side which is beyond the physical touch or appearance, where you feel that you want to create your own music. So talk to me about these both. Do you see them as separately as I see them?
I mean, yeah, so there's artistic vision and emotion, and then there's craft. So learning how to play the piano and learning technique and building finger strength and rhythmic things are all part of craft. But then without artistic vision, the craft is kind of meaningless because you're not really making music. Then it becomes just like you have a skill set to do, but you have no idea what to build out of that. And that's why I kind of started going towards Indian classical music, because I found it was really, really satisfying. And like for me, Drupad, which is like the oldest form of Indian music that's still presented today, apart from maybe Gurbani Kirtan, but I started studying with Vasuddin Dagarji, who I heard him play a show in London, and I was absolutely blown away by how patient and how much detail and nuance there was in his singing, and started reading about the Dagar family and that particular style, and I just kind of knew that this is something that I'm probably going to be studying till I'm 80 or 90 years old. It's super deep and super heavy.
So, Drupad and piano, what is the overlapping space as far as music is concerned?
I mean, so the piano is, for a good reason, not common in Indian classical music, because a lot of the things that are very special to Drupad, you either cannot do on the piano or it's very, very difficult to do. But the thing that really interested me about it was I loved that music and I loved the piano, and I wanted to find, especially when I was younger, how can I get as close as possible. And for the last 12, 13 years, I've been working towards that, and it's almost like an asymptote where the closer you get, the further away you realize you are. And there was something about the fact that the end result will never be reached. But the work towards it helps me find hundreds and hundreds of tangential things, like learning how to make sounds on the piano that no one else could make. Or one instant would be to get Andolan on the piano, I would sit and play one note for 6-7 hours every single day, just one note, and try and figure out how can I release that note so there'll be a shape in the sound. And the search for all of these kind of things is what led me to try and, the thing that I always thought about is I want to create my own virtuosity. I don't want to have the virtuosity that other pianists have, because they've done that and it's amazing and it's very inspiring. And for me, because I want to play this kind of music, what can I figure out on this instrument by putting in the time and effort and rigor into making that happen? And it's also difficult because it's a constant trial and error process where 6 months I'll work on this thing going, I'm about to get it, and then I'll find another thing saying, hang on, that might be a better way to do this. So the amount that you discover and learn through trial and error is often a lot more than going in a straight laid out line. So for me, it's been really rewarding, and I know that based on the stuff that I actually learned trying to play Drupad on the piano, there's so many tangential things that I also discover and use in composing and writing music and making arrangements that are slightly outside of Indian music.
Mm-hmm. So allow me to sort of fold my hands and bow to this gentleman. For the spirit of innovation artistically adds not only to richness of your own inner space, it also adds and elevates overall experience of people down the line, I'm sure. But now, artistic vision, you said, is important, and Indian classical music learning helped you sort of grow in that direction. Can you say something more about it? Typically speaking, a normal mind, when I say normal mind, I mean, with due respect to everyone, so most of the time people are satisfied with this range. So they say that, oh, he played this film tune, I could play it, and that's it.
Yeah.
But you weren't satisfied with that, even though you excelled in probably replicating or playing exactly as you were taught. But
Yeah.
there was something in you, and that's something. If we try to kind of understand how it needs to be respected, respected as you did in your journey, and who would you say helped you in appreciating the spirit of doing something different or composing freshly from your side?
I mean, so I feel like almost, or not almost, like everyone has a creative side, and everyone has that thing in them that you don't want to do just the thing that's over there. Like when you're playing with Lego and you're a kid, you don't want to just build the house that comes in the picture. Everyone spends time making those different things, but then people apply that creativity differently in different parts of their life, whether it be music or whether it be something else, or even how you arrange your cutlery in your drawer and things. But one of the, for me, like the people who inspired and encouraged me were just too many to list. Like my parents to start off with, friends, all of my teachers, where they've been, 20, 30 people that I've studied with, and loads of others that I've like idolized and studied their music, or even people that have gone up to their shows and had a 5-minute conversation that's been like life-changing. And all of those people have been really pivotal in just encouraging me to just follow what I want to do despite all of the obstacles in the way, and the fact that it might possibly not be the smartest financial decision or stability, like because the satisfaction that I get out of doing this is way beyond any of those other things.
I am sure. Now, the formal learning in the classroom setting, as you have pursued two courses outside India also, talk to us a little bit about how it worked in the direction that you wanted to grow for.
So I did 2 degrees. I did a jazz undergraduate degree in Scotland, and then I did a master's in contemporary improvisation at the New England Conservatory in Boston. The jazz degree it helped me get a skill set that I didn't have before then, which is understanding harmony. And I think jazz is one of those forms of music where there's a huge and great tradition behind it, but it also helps you understand almost all other musical genres in a way. It's like you kind of listen to something and you go, okay, these notes and these rhythms, and you can apply that in that way. And it helps you get comfortable with improvising on your instrument, reacting to different situations. But the course at NEC was really special because it was essentially a course that didn't have a fixed syllabus. Everyone who went there came from a completely different background. So they were songwriters, they were Korean gaegum players, they were opera singers, they were people who played just noise music in garage bands all their life, and they put everyone together, and the main emphasis was on ear training and critical thinking in music. So the first question that I was asked in school wasn't, like, how do you play that note, or what are you thinking about when you do this? It was, what are the post-colonial implications of playing Indian classical music on the piano, which is a symbol of colonization? So it was really made me think very hard about what I'm trying to do and break anything that I was doing before that to pieces, look at all of the pieces and say, is that needed, or is there enough substance behind the theory or like the concept behind this to keep working on it, which was super interesting and a very transformative time for me. But it was also funny because all of the things that were happening in that school were happening in their own way, a lot more subtly with my Guruji, with Vasavardhanji, where that was also a process of, when I was first learning Indian classical music, I used to just listen to records and watch YouTube videos and go, I think I figured it out, but then I was 13 or 14 and would make mistakes, and people would be like, come up after the concert and said, that was good, but make sure you never do that again, that's not allowed. And with Vasavardhanji, once I started learning, it was this really amazing process of don't ask any questions, but not in like a very serious disciplinary, just do what you're told kind of thing. It was more like, you'll learn through experience. I'll sing a line, you play it back. If I don't like how you played it, I'll sing it again. And each lesson would be like hours and hours, and you'd sit there, call and response, ask a question, he might answer it a year later. And it was like almost like without talking about the thing, you learn just through experience and developing your intuition for things. And I found that the results of that and the result of NEC, which was a lot of talking and discussing and arguing and battling and like referencing different things, they were all leading towards like the same thing, that I basically had to change my inspirations from people who were highly developed in their own field of the piano to people who had really carved a unique voice for themselves in any field, whether it was filmmaking or art or music, or like one of my inspirations ended up being like Le Corbusier in architecture.
Why?
Because he had this amazing project in Paris, which was, outside of Paris, but he was given the task of building kind of community housing, and he made a very radical design for it, where his whole idea was to improve the lives of the people who are living in it by making rooms designed only for one specific purpose. Like, he was so careful about, like, when you live in this house, you can only do this thing in that room, and you can only do this thing in that room. And that thought of attention to detail to how his work or his project is going to be received, which in architecture, like, function is bigger than form most of the time. But for him, everything had to be aesthetically pretty and also follow the function at the same time. And it became like a really big parallel for me for music, where I'm not gonna compromise on what I think this music should do for me or how it makes me feel, but I also need to think about how it serves other people. Like, if you listen to my music, then what do you get out of it?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just going to think loudly for a minute or so. And what you just said in the context of this architect, it takes away the freedom of the inhabitants in terms of what they can do if they are to respond to their own inner voice with reference to a particular structure. So that way it is a dictatorial from the architect's point of view. I respect what he has, but you know, there is this space. The same way about the music, every one who is in the hall will hear different things based on their already pre-existing space within, because each human being carries his own world, which is different than the other one. So this is just a point, but then coming back to the interesting comparison or the ability to see how you were learning with your Guruji, where questions were not asked, where you won't get immediate answer to your query, and this other place. So this, from one point of view, is less sensitive to the subtle aspect of your being, where you are talking about critical thinking, where you are looking at how in the post-colonial world, piano, etc. So, as a musician, were you open to work with these questions, or they were kind of putting you off that I mean, you know what I'm trying to say.
I mean, actually, so first with the Le Corbusier thing, the interesting thing was the book that changed it for me was how the inhabitants of those houses went against his wishes and changed everything to suit themselves.
I see.
So it was this amazing thing of you have to put in the intention. It's your responsibility as an artist to think about how your music comes across to other people, but also know exactly what you said, that it will be taken in different ways.
Correct.
It's a really interesting book released by MIT Press called Lived in Architecture for anyone who's interested in
And the name again?
Lived in Architecture.
By?
I can't remember the person's name. He did it as a case study.
MIT publication.
Yeah.
Okay.
But coming back to the other question, it was hard. Like, it's hard to think about things that way and be asked those questions, where earlier I was like, I make music for music's sake. But the thing that I kind of realized is I think all music has a much greater meaning if you look at it in terms of where it sits in society or where it sits in history. And like, I feel like one of the things why jazz was so great because of what was happening in America in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s. And those were important questions for me to reflect on. And they weren't necessarily questions where you have a strong answer. Like see, the answer to the piano being a symbol of colonialism, it could be reclaiming the instrument from your own point and playing the instrument by my own rules. But actually that kind of led me to, there was an amazing example of Burmese pianists doing this, where there was Burmese pianists have a different intonation system. So they would retune pianos and do this. And there was a theater where every night they would alternate between a Burmese play and a Western movie being shown. Mm-hmm. And the Western pianist would get really angry because the Burmese pianists were like retuning the instrument every night, and then he'd have to come and fix it and do that. And this battle kind of kept growing until the Burmese pianist just came and ripped half of the notes out that they didn't use in their music, and the Western pianist couldn't play on it at all. And that's like the perfect example of someone taking this thing that's there as a symbol of like imposing another culture on it and completely taking it and making it their own, so it's unusable by the other thing, which was...
So, thinking loudly with you, in Indian context, the way I have seen, I don't know whether we grow up with that kind of consciousness, and there is so much assimilation.
Yeah.
Because even after British left, we had a lot of pianos in India.
Yeah.
And people were playing, and this was considered as a symbol of prestige, or you have seen that in many Hindi films. Though he might not actually be playing it, but he was shown playing it. Yeah.
I mean, that's why it's new. It's like the way that Indian people viewed the piano, or the way that I viewed the piano, was this huge, big, powerful thing. And then I was playing Raj Kapoor ji's like songs from his movies, and his movies featured a lot of piano because he loved the piano. That's how I'd always thought of it, as a symbol of like, it's almost like a symbol of like high class and things. But then you come over here and the piano is one of those instruments that's as at home in a really rundown, beat up bar on the side of a highway somewhere over here, and as at home in like an opera or something like that, or like what's supposed to be like the highest like form of art. And it's one of those instruments that really kind of like can be found at every single level of those things. And for me, it was one hearing about questions like this is, how do I relate to the instrument in that way?
And I wish more and more success, as well as a continued unveiling of the newness through improvisations, through innovations, through collaborations for our Raga pianist, Steinway young artist, Utsav Lal. Utsavji, thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me here.
My guest today, Utsav Lal, Raga pianist, with lots of thanks and good wishes for him. Thanks for being with us. This is Ashok Vyas.